Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We continue monitoring the impact of the explosion at the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant dam, including the impact on economy, not only the military consequences. And now we are going to discuss the impact on the agriculture with Pavlo Koval, director of the Ukrainian Agrarian Confederation, who is online with us today. Can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you and both see you. So now the first general question. How the flood caused by the dam explosion could affect the Ukrainian agriculture? Information from the members of your confederation. And the situation is really rather difficult, and it started a week ago. And the members of Ukraine, of the Ukrainian Agrarian Confederation, are among the victims of this catastrophe. There's flooded infrastructure near Dnipro. And the farmers who produced tomatoes and processed them were affected, small-sized and medium-sized farmers. We have some preliminary conclusions now. The situation is very catastrophic. We know that the south of Ukraine, where it's black soil, can be effective if we have proper irrigation systems. When it comes to the Kherson region, nowadays we have been losing the biggest in Ukraine and the biggest in Europe, Kakhovka irrigation system. I'd like to remind now that the Kakhovka reservoir is a very large hydrotechnic object that have been artificially created, and its length is 230 kilometers. Its width is 24 kilometers in the widest part. And to understand, we also take into account the depth of the reservoir, the general volume of water was about 18.2 cubic kilometers. So these are million tons of water. This was kind of a debit reservoir of irrigation waters that fed more than 31 irrigation systems that are now deprived of water and ruined. If we look at the proportions for the regions that were watered, this is more than 90%. Kherson Oblast has lost its water sources, water pumps, and sometimes even canals, including the canals of low pressure. I think that you've seen those pictures, those videos when a farmer stands in the water looking at his watermelons just floating on the water, and he's crying. And they've been in occupation for more than a year now, so they just invested sometimes they lost money to do something, but and we can understand why these people and now frustrated and disappointed. But we will not leave our people alone. We will support them. We will control the right bank. And most settlements on the right bank were flooded, and there are 15 settlements on the left bank, and in general 80 settlements have been flooded. When it comes to irrigation systems, 92% in the Kherson Oblast of such systems have been destroyed. These are not farms. These are irrigation systems that watered dozens of farmers. and the south of Dnipro Oblast, from Kryvyi Rih to the borderline with Kherson and partially Mykolaiv Oblast, 30% of losses here when it comes to irrigation systems. So this is the source of irrigation water. And we can see now the consequences and the opportunities of farmers. So if there has been no flood, they will not be able to irrigate their plantations. As for the prospects for the next year, and I think that your audience is aware that the Kherson Oblast is among the 5 biggest regions when it comes to agriculture. There is around 2 million plantations there, 85%. These are the southern steppes of Ukraine. There are arable soils there, and they require constant irrigation. But now, this tool for efficient agrarian activities have been lost. We do not know the period now, so this can be transformed into drip irrigation, impulse drip irrigation, but this requires time, this requires investments, and we also need to understand the debit potential. If it will be possible to take water from the Dnipro River, and we do not know now where this Dnipro channel will be because the flood is still there. Also, the level of water has been decreasing. In those places, when it is possible to test the level of water, we can see now that it is at the level of 3.5 meters, but before it was up to 6 meters. That's why this is the consequences. And what was grown in the Kherson Oblast, 1.5 million hectares. These were winter crops, winter wheat, corn, sunflower, but that mostly grew vegetables there, as well as berries, watermelons, melons, tomatoes, cucumbers, etc. The experts now say that around 75% of the vegetable production was in the south of Ukraine, mainly in the Kherson region. The Kherson region produced around 4 million tons of grains and oil seeds, and that was the part of export potential of Ukraine. So 3 million tons of oil seeds will not be sent to the outer markets of Ukraine. This is only about grains, oilseeds, and the products of processing thereof. And this is a significant amount. Around 9% of export of grains were produced in the irrigated southern regions, including the Kherson region. So these are significant losses, not only for Ukrainians who live there and who are facing problems and challenges now. These are producers, processors, and exporters, and also these are the countries of Africa and Asia that also bought products from Ukraine. And this is briefly about the catastrophe that was created by these terrorists, by these criminals. And so if these terrorists are provided by state weapons and by shoulder straps, it doesn't mean that they stopped being terrorists. So we've discussed it with you already. So there was the terrorism in the form of grain corridors, the attacks on power supply complex, and now, which is the most emoted, this is the food terrorism, which continues, and the international community shall assess these activities and to make conclusions. Quite often we discuss with our colleagues, experts, how quick we could recover this for agrarian activities. But it's obvious that we cannot do this quickly because left bank Kherson region is still shelled by missiles and artillery systems. So we know that there are dead people, that Russians attack, and the peaceful civilian objects. The terrorism is ongoing. The left bank is not fully controlled by Ukrainian forces. We have partisans there, and we try to monitor the situation there also, although it's difficult. But we cannot properly assess the situation because when the water recedes, we need to first demine those territories because there was the final defense line of Russian occupiers, including trenches, warehouses, etc., on the left bank. And partially it was washed into the Black Sea, and partially all these devices are brought to the coastline, to the settlements. So we need to eliminate the threat first. After demining, after establishing control there, we will be able to assess the situations there, this arables and the soils. This is the whole complex of agrarian productions. There were oil deposits, some chemical facilities, and you know that 150 tons of machine oils have got into the waters from the Kakhovka reservoir, and we do not know where this oil now. We need to assess everything. So the all soils there should be assessed from the ecological point of view to understand is it possible to recultivate these lands. And in Kherson Oblast, there were long-term plantations, grapes, fruits, berries. We should also assess their conditions, if it is possible to recultivate them, to replant them, and it is not that easy as with carrots, when you can got harvest like in 2 months after seeding. Mr. Koval, if you allow, I would like to focus on the aspect that you have not mentioned yet, although it's very important. Last year and the year before, we discussed the possibility of development of river transport, like Nibel and company was increasing the transportation volume by rivers. Will this disaster affect the possible development of river transport, which is an important component for agribusiness in Ukraine? It is a very critical issue, and actually I wanted to discuss it as well. Ukraine has lost the river navigation along the Dnipro River. So if the dam is destroyed to the bottom, then to the bed of the river, then it is impossible to talk about any navigation there. And the navigation in the Dnipro River is maintained by the whole chain of gateways. And Nibelung is also the member of our federation. And we know that the elevator complex, the transshipment complex has been damaged, and there was the infrastructure in the open sea near the city of Kherson. So it means that we are losing all these possibilities, all these opportunities, and this is plus to the fact, additional to the fact that the grain corridor is not that efficient, and even after the liberation of the Black Sea region, we'll need to make decisions to invest and to understand how to use the opportunities that are left there. But we should say that we have lost all these possibilities for some period of time because the whole gateway system has been destroyed there, and the capacity is at zero level at the moment. But I think that we should also should assess this from a technical point of view. Could we recover and restore this quickly? Should we unite this with the energy requirements? Should we rebuild the power station, or should we just restore first the gateway system? There is the whole range of questions there, and it is said that we could do without Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. But this is a complex task, and I think that you've already seen those photos when there's some historical landscape. Now that we can see the temporary bridges of the 1940s, and this territory over Zaporizhia, over Nikopol, that was the reservoir, had the historical name, the Veliki Lug. That was the swamp area with some rivers and with some small islands. So if we cannot have a reservoir there, we should think about what we can do there and what is the state of the bed of the reservoir. So there is the whole range of issues that we should assess. And moreover, I would just like to say a few more words, which is very important, because we are losing flora and fauna in the reservoir and around the reservoir. We have already lost the significant stocks of fish, the genetic material that we should recover, and the fish just died there. Some fishes will be brought to the Black Sea, to the salty environment, and the fish will die there as well. And there is now a significant impact on the Black Sea. So there is a significant discharge of fresh water, which affects the salinity of the Black Sea. And this will also kill the Black Sea flora and fauna, and we will see soon on the coastline the remnants of dead animals and dead plants from there. And this is also the sanitary and hygienic issues, including the Odesa region, because we can see some negative information in mass media now. So there is the whole complex of problems, of challenges caused by this crime. We should also have the assessment on international platforms, and we can see inadequate response by the UN, by the Red Cross, etc. But after liberation of the territories, they say that we can assess only after the liberation of the territories. But some people have been staying on the roofs of their houses for around a week now without water. The situation is very difficult. And here, like just an hour ago, we had the briefing of representatives of the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken, 1955 to be precise. Farmers will have to use other systems, more modern systems. These are drip irrigation, for example. Is agribusiness of Ukraine ready to invest in this infrastructure to compensate the lack of old irrigation system that depended on the Kakhovka reservoir? Yes, this is a very difficult issue now, which is critically important now. So in drip irrigation, you can use less water compared to rain irrigation, but we need to adjust the old irrigation system. So we need to construct pump stations. We need to build canals to bring water to territories. There is also the folk irrigation, impulse irrigation. These technologies are already in Ukraine, but this all requires time and investments. According to assessments of experts, before the development of the relevant draft law, we assessed the issue. And according to the assessment, if we invest only in pipelines, we need around uh, 2,500 euro for one farm. And if we lost 600 hectares of irrigated lands, and if we also calculate in Zaporizhzhia and the Petrovsk regions, it can be up to 1.5 billion hectares. So if we need to reconstruct 10 pump stations and the whole system, even for drip irrigation, then it will require for 1.5 million multiplied by 3,000 euros. So these are billions of euros. And we need actually to learn how to spend and use this money quickly, and we have not seen such projects in Ukraine yet. Also, we should follow the green course according to European and world standards. And the next question is what we will grow there using these drip systems, because it is very difficult to use such irrigation systems for sunflower and for wheat. Because this could be used for berries, but just to cultivate sunflowers, wheat, corn, we need different systems. We should assess everything, and for that we should first demine everything, assess the environmental situation, and also to develop the program for investment. And of course, we cannot do this, and it will be difficult without public funds, without strategy, and we also need guarantees here, and also the strategy of water usage. And without proper irrigation in the southern regions, we can boost the development of salines. Sometimes we discussed that the Soviet system was outdated, but we could somehow update it. But now we have to develop everything from the scratch. But the progressive world supports us, and we will be able to introduce the newest technologies with effective rational use of fresh water in this region. And we will relaunch everything. I just do not want now to use the word recover, reconstruct, because we should not try to reconstruct something outdated. But we just first developed the conceptual notes and the whole strategy of reloading the whole system in southern regions of Ukraine. And there is a lot of work ahead of us. And the last question. And this is not related directly to the topic of our briefing, but this is a very important issue. Recently, the deputy head of the Ministry of Economy, Taras Kachka, according to the Reuters, informed that subsidies from Poland are not in line with the rules of the World Trade Organization. This is around $2.5 billion that was provided for the agriculture of Poland. Can you comment on this statement, and what will be the consequences if it is really not in line with the rules of the World Trade Organization? Now I can express my personal subjective opinion. we should be well balanced in such statements. We should be like a Blade Runner, like Blade Runners, because we should not forget about the support rendered to us by Poland, by our friends from there, and who all now like the import gates for like weapon supply, for example. The war is not over. We have the F-16 coalition, etc. That's why all those the so-called Polish case that we faced before our Easter, and I was in Brussels back then, and I could monitor the situation there. From there, and these are internal political processes of EU member states. We know that Poland will have elections in October. And so this is the part of election campaigns. Poland has already seen some problems with the officials, for example, with the Minister of Economy left the job. And but we should not try to use this situation to have some additional support. And I've already said that European officials and Ukrainian officials lacked some strategic vision. The problems that arose at the internal grain market, why we have embargo on all agrarian products, and then we returned to four groups of products, and the transit was left. So we have a kind of a blend of economic, political, and populism decision and solutions. According to the association agreement, according to Maastricht agreement of the EU, no individual country could affect the general European trade policy. And what we've seen from our partners and neighbors, Poland, Slovakia, Romania, Hungary, and they just created burdens, barriers, and we are the candidates of the EU. We have the association agreement. We have the general European agreements. That's why an attempt to receive additional subsidies will be assessed properly with time. But I'd like to remind once again, there are different levels. There are the levels of NGOs, like our organizations, at the level of experts, at the business level, at the level of governmental structures. There have been an ongoing discussion between European and Ukrainian colleagues, and on bilateral level, Ukraine, Romania, Ukraine, Poland. There are constant dialogue in logistics, customs issues, economic issues, in the branch associations and sectoral associations, etc. I think that if the decision has been made, this money will be provided, but there will be this will be a lesson for the European Commission and European Brussels officials how to prevent this in the future. And if you allow, I would like to add a few more words. And this was the consequences of logistics issues from the economic point of view, that we oversaturated the Polish market with the cheap grains. But this is only half of the truth, because it was possible to forecast the technical capacity of the border crossing on the way to Poland, how to control transit. And actually, Polish business was glad to buy our cheap grains, barley, meals, etc. But after embargo, when the markets were closed, they told that that they could not agree on this. That this was what I've heard from the Polish producers of milk, poultry, etc. So this is a disputable issue. And a month ago, I already told that that will be kind of a test for the resilience of the European Union. If they agree to the requirements of individual countries that violate internal EU agreements. And also, this comes to the delegation of powers. When one country with one vote can destroy trade policy, this could lead to political consequences. But we also are well aware of kind of inertia of the European political circles. And we know how to improve the difficult logistics to the EU countries and from them. And we need to deploy the automated tool for logistics planning. We have localized solutions. We are going to propose them to Brussels and other platforms, and actually to use it for solidarity lanes. If we can use this for logistics planning and also the planning of the volumes of supplies, perhaps we could avoid Polish and Romanian case in our relations. That was Pavlo Koval with us. Hopefully, we will be able to see you once again in our media center. Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm always happy to be here. Thank you. That was the last briefing for today. Please follow our announcements, and I can say that tomorrow we will have briefings at 11, 12, and 1 p.m. They will be partially dedicated to monitoring the situation with the Kakhovka team and other issues of our regions. Please stay tuned.